Hello, welcome back to the Lego Porg little build we're doing. We're 2 bags in at this point, I'm guessing. By the 2 empty bags I can almost see. Let's have a quick tidy up before I keep going. Let's rebuild. It looks like we're adding a lot of white today. This should be easy. I think all the hard stuff I built last time, and it's just adding detail now, which in theory is easier because if you make a mistake, it's less detrimental. Pop that to the side. Just spread this out a bit. Okay, right. Oh god, I need to find these 2 little triangular pieces. They look exactly like this. I mean, this is them. They're small, sometimes they're mirrored, they can be a real pain. I'm glad I found them immediately. Now it just looks like I'm a whiny bitch, doesn't it? That's fine, that's life. There we are. I'm getting moving on this so quickly today. This is fantastic. So I'm actually recording this the day after I did the last part. So I made the lasagna. This ongoing drama turned out pretty well, I'm told. Didn't get to eat any of it as I predicted, but it went well, suffice it to say. And I only did most of it, nearly all of it, I would say. I managed to sit by for one operation. Where are you little white shit? So I went to the movies. I saw, what did I see? Green Book. Oh my god, Green Book. Not what I expected, genuinely, right? I was thinking it was going to be one of those films where it's about America in like the 60s, particularly in the Deep South, and it's very hard to watch because you're like, oh god, they were so racist to that man, they were awful. Which they were, don't get me wrong, but actually it turned out to be much more of a movie about two friends, essentially, having kind of a road trip, becoming friends. Hang on. Damn radiator was whistling. Yep, still mic'd up. Yeah, it was way more about Viggo Mortensen and the other guy, his name... It's a difficult one. I'm going to have a go. I think it's Mahershala Ali. It's something like that. I've not... Here's the trouble. I've only heard it spoken once. I've only seen it written down once. I haven't had enough time to bed in. Ironically, there's a big plot in the film about how Viggo's character Tony, no one in the South can pronounce his last name. In fact, it's one of those funny... It's a very well-written joke. Full spoilers for this film are probably coming up. It's not really a film you can spoil because it's not that sort of film. At the start of the film, the doctor he's travelling with, he goes, you might consider going by a different name when we're in the South. I don't think people are going to be able to pronounce it because he was Italian. And he goes, why don't you go by Tony Valley? And he disagrees with it. His name is Valalanka. You can't even say it without adding a bit of accent, can you? It's a good name. But he refuses. He's like, well, they can try it or they can fail. It's up to them, really, isn't it? And then just throughout the film, anyone who ever attempts to say his name, they all say it differently. They all say it wrong, but they never point to it particularly. It's always like sort of almost in passing, and like he doesn't ever bring it up. Like he's clearly just used to it and he doesn't really care, because they're trying at least. But it's the subtlety is what makes it enjoyable. There we go. And now by telling you that, if you go and see it, because it will have been out for a while now, you might pick up on that. Really good film in general, actually. The one thing that was a bit odd, right? It's called Green Book. And they never actually explain in the trailer, or at least the trailer I saw, why it's called that. Because it's kind of a weird name, really, isn't it? Do you know what a green book is? I didn't. Initially, I thought it was something like a accountant's book. I think you have a red book. It's like a ledger as you'd keep, or a black book is a similar thing. I don't know exactly. It turns out a green book was a travel guide for black travellers. It listed anywhere they could stay. Because obviously they weren't allowed to, I don't know if obviously is the right term, unfortunately they weren't allowed to stay in every establishment. There are a lot of coloureds only places, and it was like almost a review guide to those, which I didn't realise going in that's what it was. And like Tony Vigo, who in my head throughout the film, he's put on a lot of weight to it. It's very much in the same vein as Vigo, as Christian Bale in Vice. He's put on a lot of weight, but for some reason he's getting no notoriety for it, which I can only assume means that he's been fat for a while. But the only thing I've seen him in the past like 10 years really, he was in Captain Fantastic, but I didn't see that. It's Lord of the Rings, which I only just watched the other day, and he's not ripped in that, but he's in pretty good shape. And yeah, he's a heroic character. And I kept throughout the whole film, every time you see him like eating food or sat smoking with his top off and his fat gut hanging out, I was just like, my king, my liege, what's happened to you? It's just a really funny idea. It's the Robert Baratheon approach, you know. While he was fighting the War of the Ring, he was young and fit and in shape, but then afterwards he just gets fat, which is very funny. But that was a big part of the film as well. It's like he's Italian, and he's kind of a fat shit. So there's so much food in the film. He's almost eating in every scene, and it's not often for like a good reason. Like early on, he goes and he wins a hot dog eating contest to make money for his family. Yep. This thing I'm making, it's becoming weirdly complicated. It's filling in nicely and all. I don't really know what it is. Well, I know what it is. Everything I'm making is kind of feather effect, isn't it? Stuff I could never really make without the aid of instructions. I'm deep into Monster Hunter World at the minute. I'm playing. They got a big event going on at the minute. It's the Appreciation Fest, which it's been out for a year. Well, it's weird. It's been out for a year on console. It came out January of last year on PS4, and I think Xbox, but I feel like no one mentions that. But I know it was out on PS4 because I couldn't play it, and I was annoyed, and I was like, I'll wait. I considered buying a PS4. I was like, I'll wait until it comes on PC because they've already said it will, and then I had to wait 8 months. Not that long, really, in the grand scheme of things. So they got this Appreciation Fest going on where there's events, there's like daily activities, and all sorts. It's a little bit limited, annoyingly. The console version once again gets more stuff for some reason. You know, why can't they just release it all for all of us? But I'm enjoying that, having fun. I just decided to finally swap over. I've been a Charge Blade main since the game came out, because that's what I used to play in Monster Hunter Generations, and I think 4 Ultimate is where the Charge. I think it was in 4 Ultimate, and then it was in Generations. I played it in both of them. In 4 Ultimate, I think I switched between Charge Blade and Insect Glaive, because normally in Monster Hunter I just pick whatever the newest weapon is, because like why not? They're not. Whenever they put a new weapon in Monster Hunter, it's normally overpowered. That's the secret. No one really tells you about, but it is true. back in Monster Hunter 3 try, there was the switch axe, which to be fair wasn't actually overpowered. But then in 3 Ultimate, they made there was this. I used the switch axe in that mostly, and then on top of that, they added in the blast status effect, which was ludicrously overpowered when it came in. It was to the point where it would damage a monster, its parts, so you could break them easier. It would do actual damage to the monster, and nothing was like weak against it. Or the way resistance to blast worked meant that it was kind of irrelevant. No matter what monster, even monsters that had like the strongest resistance to it, it was like it's still quicker to use this than literally anything else. So once you build that set, like a good blast weapon, it's like don't really need to do anything else here. And people you're playing with is like, look, go ahead, build, you know. It's like, oh, what are we fighting next? The Rathalos. What are they weak to? It's like, oh, well, they're weak to thunder, but they're also weak to dragon, and there's a bit to water. And you're like, yeah, fucking blast. Use blast. Right. What am I doing with these? Just that, apparently. Yeah, and then 4 Ultimate came out, and they gave you the Insect Glaive and the Charge Blade, which were overpowered for their own reasons. That was the first game that added like proper mounting to monsters. Before that, if you were in the air, you couldn't attack, and you were fucked basically. Because if you took any kind of damage, it would send you flying, and there'd be a long recovery, so you wouldn't want to do it. Then in 4 Ultimate, suddenly you could mount the monster and do damage to it and knock it down and shit. So the Insect Glaive was great for that, because it was a weapon that you could jump any time with it, which in 4 Ultimate wasn't that easy to do. You needed to like climb up something and jump off it onto a monster, which was difficult. But with the Insect Glaive, you could just vault, which was really, really potent. And there was also, specifically, I remember there was one quest where you fight a high level. You had to fight, like, I think it was a G rank Rathalos. But the subquest, which they had back in the day, was to break its back. Which if you mounted it successfully twice, it would break its back 100% of the time. You would just leave the quest, and it was a great way of farming for something or other. Charms. Was it charms back in the day? Decorations? No, it was charms. All right. That was easy. It's got a handle now. That's good. So that's why that was overpowered. And then they had the Charge Blade, which, if you're not familiar, it's a sword and a shield, which also then you can combine together to make a big axe. They both do slashing damage, so you could cut off tails, and then on top of that, the axe would have a vial on it, which could do impact damage, which would knock a monster out. Which previously, to knock a monster out, you needed to use a hammer, which not many people use because they're kind of fiddly to use. You really have to be aiming for the head every time. And there were, it was one of the rarer weapons you'd see people use. And then there was the hunting horn, which you'd almost never see anyone use because people thought it was a weapon for support, but actually it's like the support is just a bonus to the hitting people on the head with the hammer, because it is a hammer. Putting these 4 things on now. So that, yeah, suddenly there was a really viable weapon that could cut a monster up and stun it as well, and it was just really overpowered the first time it came about, like noticeably so. Which is, it's the best way to do it for a game. You bring a new thing out, you make it overpowered to start with, so people give it a go and enjoy it. Because otherwise, it's like you bring something new out. If it's the same or worse, no one's going to care. It's got to start overpowered, and then you rein it in. That's the joy. Particularly in a game like Monster Hunter, where it's all PvE. There's no PvP. At no point are you going to be annoyed because someone else has got something overpowered. You're going to be singing songs of joy because, finally we can kill this monster easier. Let's see that, and these 2. And I've always said in Monster Hunter you want to have 2 weapons ideally you can use, and they should sort of be a split niche. In the past, I've had switch axes, I've had dual blades. You know, I've dabbled in these affairs. I've lanced a bit. I've always fancied myself as a bit of an archer, a bowman. And finally, in Monster Hunter World, after having mastered the charge blade, i.e. I've made every single charge blade, and it's like, now what? I suddenly thought, I might try the bow and arrow. Because they've made range weapons a lot more viable in this game. They used to be a real pain in the arse, because they'd have their own sets of armour, so straight away you'd have to build your own set of armour to use a ranged weapon, which was a whole pain in the arse. But now you can just use your Blade Master set. There's no such thing as Blade Master. Makes it a lot easier. So I've been fancying it for a while, and the controls are significantly better than they used to be, because you got 2 analog sticks for a start and shoulder buttons, which means you can move and aim and do multiple things at once. Whereas in the past, it was like you couldn't properly aim. It was just painful. Right, this is what am I doing? All right, so the triple with the double. Okay. All right, I've got it now. I've got it, I think. And then that goes on there to make one of them, and then make another one. Of course, I can't remember what I just did, so I'll have to follow all the instructions again. So long story short, I've had one foray into using a bow and arrow, and I seem to enjoy it. It seems like one of those weapons where you can just be a bit cheeky and take in pot shots all the time. A lot of melee weapons, to be like, you know, decent, you need to be sort of in the fray a lot and like near a monster. But if you can get back a bit, you can just be that one step removed and in theory be a little bit safer. Right. Of course, you know, all the bow mains out there will tell me how much of an idiot I'm being with that mentality. Get in there. Alright, what are we doing this time? What am I doing? I have no idea what I'm adding with this. Doesn't seem to say. It's weird. Normally tells you, but in this one it doesn't seem to. Actually, I think I might be making the phi. I mean, it doesn't matter. I'll find out once I've made it. Oh yeah, and the other thing, they've got a new event on at the minute called The Greatest Jaguarus, which I'm convinced is somehow related to The Greatest Showman, even though I know that can't be true. I think there's some kind of meme on the internet that is involved in this. Basically, it's the weakest monster in the game, the first big monster you fight. It's a giant version of it, which when they make giant versions of monsters, normally it's the same monster, but it'll just do significantly more damage. And because it's a lot bigger, you know, instead of going like that and hitting you if you're close, it can go like that and just hit you from miles away. It's essentially like that, except they've really boosted it up. They've given it some new moves and stuff, which makes it a surprisingly threatening monster. But it's really not, because it can't do anything too fancy. Like it's you know, it's got jaws, it's got claws, it's got a tail. That's all you've really got to look at. It's not like it can breathe fire all of a sudden, or like sneeze and explode. It's not got anything super fancy. But apparently a lot of people on the online just can't get to grips with that, and you realise how shitty some people are. I'm one of those. I'm a bit of a, what's the word? I'm not elitist in any way. When I play Monster Hunter, the older Monster Hunters, the way it would work is you'd have the offline mode, which would normally be low rank and then high rank, and then the online mode, which would be low rank, high rank, and G rank. A lot of people just ignore the single player, just go straight into multiplayer, which is fine. It's got near enough all the same stuff, but that means you've only ever played in multiplayer, which is not a good way to do it. And then they changed it for World it's all just one set of quests. So it's not, so you can do all of the multiplayer essentially. So you don't really have to do anything on your own, which is great from a playing with friends sort of perspective. But what it means is most people have only ever played it in multiplayer, so they're kind of a bit useless on their own. Whereas I, being the elitist that I am, completed the entire game single player, basically killed every single monster on my own before even thinking about asking for help, or even like just selecting multiplayer in general. Which, I've missed a piece out, haven't I? I mean, it's easily remedied, but there we are. So it means I'll happily hold my own against any monster. I'm not waiting around, you know, for 4 people before I go and fight something. But then you come to, like, it means you have to be less aggressive fighting that way. So you've got to, you know, you're very much on your own. It's not going to be targeting 3 other people while you heal. Might go after your cat if you're lucky. Where am I at? Have I put that on? Yep. Four and a 6. Okay. Put that there. Nope, done that wrong. Immediately wrong. There we are. Good. So it means suddenly in these fights where you're used to just owning a monster and it's suddenly quite good, people don't know what to do and they're surprised that they're dying. Then on the other hand of it, this whole Great Jaguar thing, it's not really about killing it. It's about making it vomit, and when it vomits, it shoots up all these rewards that you can just pick up, and even if you fail the quest, you still get them. Okay, need that and a corner piece. So I got that on the go at the minute, Monster Hunter. Still vastly enjoying that. I'm playing a lot of Smash Brothers on the Switch, obviously on the Switch. Who's playing any other Smash Brothers at this point? Well, people are playing Melee, obviously, those weirdos. And to be fair, the Wii U one's perfectly good as well. Never really gave that the time of day. Yeah, I'm playing a lot of that on Switch. I just released the Piranha Plant, which I've only played as once, but I like that he's in there. It's a fine addition. In fact, it's not a fine edition, it's a weird edition, which is what I like in Smash Brothers. I like weird editions. It's why I feel like Ryu and Ken are like the most boring editions possible. Them two and the 2 Castlevania ones, like they're so sort of generic, like they just make too much sense to be in there. They need to be a bit weirder. Bayonetta's kind of weird. She's weird as a character in there, but not as a character to be added. Give me my Inklings, odd characters. What do? They shoot ink and figure it out. You shouldn't be able to immediately pick it up and know what you're doing. You should have to read a 12-page guide on ink management. I'm really enjoying that at the minute. I'm optimistically trying to complete like all of the challenges that are in that game, and there's a lot of them. It's that game's equivalent of, well, I was gonna say it's the equivalent of trophies, or achievements, but really it's not, because they have 2 systems that could be that. But I'm quietly whittling away at that, trying to complete all the characters' classic modes, that sort of thing. It's just really enjoyable. I just really like playing the game, and they made it. There's a huge wealth of single player content in there that it just makes it really enjoyable. And I'm also sort of quietly building towards the idea of being like both competent with all characters and then like really good with a couple. The only thing with Smash is I don't have a legitimate main. That's my one weakness. I sort of move around a lot. I'm quite fond of Ike. He's one I like. I also quite like Roy. Don't like Crom though. Right, I've made an error. Somehow this isn't fitting. Run before you can walk, man. What have I done wrong here? I'm gonna have to go. Right. You bitch. Total bitch. Right, is that meant to go there? Actually, I don't think it is meant to go there. So much for having any kind of nails. Right, so that bit does, that's on there. I've put a bit in the wrong place, that's what it is. Now it's not going to come out. It's in such an awkward place. It's like really locked in there. Thank God for these though. That's a real fucking marvel of engineering. I don't know how they work. Well, I mean, I do know how they work. They're quite simple, but you know, it's good. Is that all the bits on that I took off? And is it correct? Hopefully. I've completed the world of light in Smash Brothers, and I was really annoyed because I heard someone like a reviewer online saying, yeah, it's a really good mode. It hasn't got much in the way of like cutscenes throughout the mode. It's got one at the start and then one at the end. And then she said the one at the end like makes it worth playing. Like, so I was expecting like a decent, almost kind of, well, essentially like the first one, like a little mini thing of like, fuck does this go? Of all the characters like fighting off the villains, that sort of thing. And I beat it, and I'm convinced that I haven't got the proper ending because I was like, this is nothing. This is no kind of ending at all. This isn't remotely worth it. So I'm still kind of working that. I don't want to just go online and look it up because, like, I mean, it's just not in the spirit of things, is it? It's more fun to have to kind of work it out on your own. But I think, because it's very hard to keep track, but I think I've got literally one fight I haven't done, one spirit fight in that world to do, and it is a real bastard. It's a stamina battle. It's in like the final area. It's against Captain Falcon, and then he gets an assist trophy immediately. And the character you're actually, like the spirit you're fighting is, it's from Street Fighter. I want to say it's Guile, the one with like the spiky then flat hair. I think that's who it is. I can't entirely remember. And it's such a bastard of a fight. Because again, it's a stamina battle. And he seems to like take no damage whatsoever. And you take like loads of damage. And I mean, like, I'm working on it. I'm sure what it is like there's a combination of spirits you can use that makes it just that much easier. But by an easier, I do mean cheesier. In fact, don't I? I need to cheese my way through it. I'll get there eventually. I'm just chipping away at it. I've got to figure out the right strategy, which is what I love about that the world of light is. It's almost like an RPG in some respects, where it's like, yeah, you can brute force your way through most of it. And every so often you'll come against a fight and you'll be like, what do I need for this? How do I do this? What do I need spirit-wise? What would weapons help going in? Should I swap out a character? Do I want someone big and heavy who can just stand there and take a beating? Or most of the time I go Little Mac because he's so nimble and he's just so powerful that you can overpower most enemies. But every now and again that doesn't quite work. What do I need? One of these as well. Okay, that immediately came off. That's always a good sign. You may notice I'm much less ill than I was. It's immediately made me thirsty. Been a mere 24 hours, but I can almost breathe entirely freely. I'm not reliant on tissues to survive. Life is good. What bit am I on? This bit. Flat, a triple white, and a little grey stump. Perfect. Wedge going this way. Right. Yeah. Good. The other game I'm playing at the minute, sort of on and off, in a I can't tell if I really like this game or I don't sort of way, is Sunless Skies, which I think by now I'll have released a few videos on, or maybe not. It was one of those games where Sunless Seas is one of those where I looked at it like a handful of times when it would pop up on sale or like in my sort of recommended category. I'd look at it and think, that does look kind of interesting, but I don't know if I want to play it. And then Sunless Skies, which is the sequel, sort of. It is a sequel, really, isn't it? That came out recently. In fact, I saw it coming out and I was like, that seems like the exact sort of game that if I request a key, they'll probably give me one for it. So I requested the key and they did give me one for it. And I was like, yes, validation. It happens so rarely. Actually, it's becoming less rare these days. Oh, yeah, this can be fitted now. This is the left buttock. And it's kind of like that. And that went on very painlessly for a change. And make another one now, only mirrored this time. Right, grey block. So it's kind of like, it's a bit of an FTL sort of game. It's a roguelike, but I feel like when you say it's a roguelike to people, they'll naturally assume that it means it's a platformer game, like an action platformer, because most roguelikes kind of are, but that's not what a roguelike is it? It's a game where there's normally a certain amount of randomness generation-wise, and then on top of that, once you die, your stuff's gone. In reality, a roguelike to me means you die, you start again. That's all it really means to me. So it's one of them, but it's a bit slower. It's actually a roguelite because you get some stuff back when you die. But yeah, and I finally, after about probably 5 runs at the game, I've finally hit a run where it feels like things are kind of going well for me. It's like, okay, I'm starting to make a bit of money. I can see myself like being able to do shit. Essentially, it's one of those runs where like, okay, I've got a little bit going on here. So I need to visit back to that and sort of keep going. It's a very harsh game in places, and it's got some of the worst gamepad controls known to man. That game, I think it's coming to console at some point. Presumably by then they'll have figured out how the controls will work, because currently on PC they're not good. You can control your train all right, but for going through the menus and stuff, it's just the worst thing ever. And I don't know why, because they could have just done just have a moving cursor that you move with the joystick. That's fine. Control stick even. They haven't called it a joystick in years. That's fine. That's what they do in like No Man's Sky has that. Destiny has that. You just move a cursor on the screen. It's fine. What do I need now? Have I skipped a load of steps? I have. I'm down here now. One of these, a smaller one of those. What's going on with Star Wars anyway? I feel like for a time I knew exactly what was going on with Star Wars. There was Rogue One, there was another numbered film, and there was Solo. And now I feel like I know nothing. There doesn't seem to be any games on the horizon. What the hell's up with that? They've cancelled another one. Although apparently Insider Speak says it's probably for the best they cancelled it because it was a goddamn mess. In fact, no, they said it was almost exactly Uncharted. Me mo. Almost there. One of them. Oh god, I just remembered there's a new Marvel Ultimate Alliance game coming out, isn't there? I've played X-Men Legends for the channel, haven't I? One day I'll probably do X-Men Legends too. The annoying thing is, they're kind of fun games to play, but like as that series went on, the games became more, I would say, sprawling and RPG-ish E and slightly less focused in a sense, which I feel makes them less viable for that Let's Play style content. The first one, X-Men Legends in particular, as much as I love it, playing through it, I was like, it's a lot of the same, isn't it? Like the combat, it's fun to play, but it's not that fun to watch, which is in fact indicative of all action RPGs like that, or at least the Diablo-esque ones, I feel. Fun to play, just not that fun to watch. Which is what I've heard is true of Anthem as well, which I'm quietly excited by, because it just looks to me like you get to fly mechs around, which is my idea of a good time. There's not enough games in which you can actually just fly. Like what was the last AAA game that you could fly in, like properly fly? I can't think of one. There's jumping with attitude, that doesn't count. Spider-Man can swing, but when you can actually fly in a game, that's different. That's a different thing altogether. I'm still waiting on a later day update to Breath of the Wild that just somehow adds flight to it, like proper flight. Just Cause, I suppose, would be one. In Just Cause, what are we on now? Just Cause 4 is the one coming out, or it might already be out. In fact, Just Cause 3 anyway, that's the last one I played. You couldn't really fly in it, you had the wingsuit. But then they added that DLC, which meant you could just fly. They had a DLC where they added a jetpack for your wingsuit, which essentially meant that you could fly in a certain capacity. They gave you a boat that was better than any other boat ever, so if you're ever on the water, you'd always call that boat in the Luchador, I think it was called. And then they added mech tanks, which are super cool and massively overpowered. But it was great, the air, land and sea. The only trouble with that game, it's almost too damn generous for its own good. Oh, I need a little max stump. The mistake I keep making is I'm not paying attention to what it's telling me to put on. I'm just looking at the pictures, which is a very risky way to go about building Lego, because you can easily miss shit. Particularly if you're as flippant as I am. And a corner piece. And this goes... Where does this go? This doesn't look like anything I've made at all. This step I'm on right now is actually the step I was on the last bit of this I did, and I messed up massively. I've got it. Weirdly, the fact that it's mirrored is making it like much harder for me to figure it out. As in, it's mirrored from the last bit I've made. I made this side, I'm now making this side. I feel that's clear, but... Okay. Then this goes on here. I've just realised I was playing with my dog quite a lot before I filmed this. I haven't looked in a mirror since then. My dog has black hair. I may have black hair all over my face without having realised. That's not some crude attempt at minstrel humour. That's an accident. I'm now looking at the viewfinder of my camera, which, from my point of view, is only this big. It's actually almost the exact same size as the screen on the Nintendo DS. So I can't really tell from here, but I feel in the editing suite I will realise I've made a terribly racially insensitive manoeuvre. And I apologise ahead of time for that. It's not intended. It's merely me not really ever looking in a mirror. And that's not me being like some wellness guru, like, oh yes, you shouldn't judge yourself based on the mirror. That leads to bad karma. That's just me being lazy. Shit, where does this go? There. Right, I've got to stop jumping ahead. It's a really bad idea. And yet, I still do. There we are. So I realised, after having watched Vice the other day, it's got Steve Carell in it. He's good in it. Steve Carell is a really underrated actor because he started out doing comedy. He does a lot of drama now. And he's really good at both. He's just really good at playing very likeable characters. I think he's had 3 films out in this country this year already. And we're only just in February. 3 films in January. Now granted, most of them weren't very good. In fact, no, that's a lie. Vice was good, but he wasn't the main character. The one he was the main in, I can't think what it was even called. It was about his son being a drug addict. It's one of those films I see it and I was like, that looks like Oscar bait to me, and I cannot be arsed. And I've got no time for drug culture in any way, or at least the negatives of it. So I was like, I don't give a shit about that. There was one called Welcome to Marwin, which had kind of a cool trailer, but again, it did look slightly like Oscar bait to me. It was about an army vet who Steve Carell played. An army vet who was an artist, and then he gets beat up and he gets his hands broken, so he can't paint anymore. So he makes loads of little models and action figures and stuff. It looked kind of cool, but it did, again, it looked slightly like Oscar bait. And then he had, he was in Vice, obviously. And on the note of Oscar bait, there's another film I keep seeing adverts for, and I can't tell if it's a serious film or not. It's what's his name? You know the one. Mark Wahlberg. He plays. It's Mark Wahlberg, and it's about a couple, him and his wife. They're adopting kids or some shit. And I can only assume that this is a film that probably came out in the summer in America to like mediocre response. So they didn't bother doing it in like UK. They thought, fuck it, we'll leave it. And now there's like room on the slate, and they think, just chuck it out now. It's not a great film. It's like, it's not funny enough to be a comedy. It's not heartwarming enough to be a heartwarming drama. Bear with me. So I thought, just stick it out now, see how it does. Because it's such a weird film. It's like them being parents and they're adopting 3 kids. But I was watching, I was like, did they let just like parentless couples adopt 3 children off the bat? One of them was 18. I think the others were like, I don't know, 4 and 7, something like that. It's like, that's a lot of responsibility. That's the sort of thing you'd normally do to like the experienced adopters, don't you? The empty nesters. Some would say that 18 is too old for adoption in many senses as well. Again, I don't know. Apparently it's based on a true story. It looks like one of those films. I'm like, how old was this for a start? It seems to have no reference in time of any kind. I was hoping there was more to add to this, because I've got all these pieces left and it's far too many. And yes, there is a little bit more to add. This little pair of flourishes. So there's that Mark Wahlberg film, which I can't think what it's called. I might go and see it, but I also suspect it's the sort of film that will be rated like 2 stars, and it will come out for like 4 hours one afternoon, and that'll be its only release. I find that so weird. I go to the cinema a lot. I see trailers for stuff, and I think, they're pushing it pretty big. And then like in the cinema, I'll see like posters up for films and stuff. They're really going for it with the advertising here. And then when it comes to the film itself, it's like they have one showing at 4 o'clock on a Tuesday, and that's it. I'm like, mixed messaging here. You want me to see it or you don't? Right, okay, so what I've learnt is, I think this is the bottom of the mouth, and also these 2 bits are moving, so I suspect the wings flap as well, eventually. How are we doing on time? Yeah, alright, I'm going to stretch this out for as much as it's worth. There's 2 little corner bits left. I wonder if I'm missing something. Actually, I immediately notice I am missing something. That goes there, and haven't done it on that side. Right, have I missed this one out from somewhere? I can almost buy one spare piece as being acceptable. I flicked to the right page straight away and it threw me off. No, I didn't. Idiot. Damn mirrors. Never could get around them. Witchcraft it is. You can probably turn off. The video's basically over. I don't think anything more is going to be added. I don't think there has been anything worth seeing anyway. Yeah. Okay. That's just a spare piece. Just ignore it. Yeah, 2 bags left. We'll save that. I'll do another part on this. Got to milk this porg for all it's worth. Although I bet they're fucking delicious, aren't they? Remember that scene where Chewie's eating one? I bet they're really good eating. And I bet you have to do like fuck all work to prepare them as well. I bet you can just pick it up, you stick it in a bucket of water, it drowns immediately, and like you just shake it and all the skin and like all the fur and that and wings fall off. Had to just cut some wholesomeness out of this, didn't I? I think it's wings next. They look like they flap. So it must be, I'm guessing, wings and head would be my assumption. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.